Then I would like to welcome you very warmly to the second Future of Work talk. The topic of today, it's a very interesting topic, and I think many companies are currently thinking about this topic. It is, what does the workplace of the future look like? And we already have very excellent speakers, as always, lined up and ready to inspiring you. Before we start, just a couple of words on who is hosting and a bit about the event, but I promise I'll keep it very short. So you should be able to see the screen, right? I see nodding, okay. So very shortly, who are the hosts of today? It's myself, my name is Ivan. I'm co-founder and CEO of Deskbird. Deskbird is a mobile app which aggregates the coolest co-working spaces around Europe. And so we allow freelancers to easily check into co-working spaces and also offer our solution to corporates who want to offer their employees a nice alternative, a nice add-on to remote working. And Isabel Steinhoff, she's actually a couple of minutes late, apologizing. She is CEO of Parato, a consulting company, and co-founder of Shake Up, the workplace. Okay, so the screen is not sharing yet, apparently. Let me try again. Okay, now it should be working.
Yes, we can see.
All right, then before we hand over to our amazing speakers of today, just a couple of words about the event series. So for the ones that have that attend the first time, it's a very simple goal of this event. So basically, we just want to inspire you around the future of work. This is how it all started, and now it's the second event already of the series. How is the format of the Future of Work talk? It's we decided for a snackable format. It's supposed to be less than 45 minutes. So, and it's always two parts. The first part is that we have very crisp and inspiring talks from our speakers. And the second part will be a Q&A based on the received questions. And just here as a remark, if you have questions to the speakers, please just post them in the chat. And at the end of the session, we'll just head them towards the speakers. Talking about the second Future of Work talk, we said already that the topic is, what will the workplace of the future look like? And we have speakers ready to start, and I'll just hand over in a few seconds. So the first speaker will be Charlotte Moon West from Unispace. She has several years of experience at Unispace. Unispace is an international company advising large corporates how to design office space, and she will talk about what will office space look like and feel in the future. And then we'll have Tobias Steger, senior executive at Microsoft, with a strong passion for digital transformation. And also very interesting to note is that Microsoft started being remote actually already in 2012. So quite a pioneer, but I'll keep it short and then leave it then to Tobias to talk more about it. And then we have the questions from the audience, and we'll do the wrap up at around 5:10. So then I'm happy to hand over to Charlotte for the first talk.
Very good. So if you stop sharing your screen, then I can share mine. Super. Good afternoon, everybody. Yes, so as Ivan mentioned, I'm part of an organization called Unispace. So I'm one of the strategy leads for Unispace in Europe, but we also offer services in design and construction, and we have a global footprint. So quite often we'll be starting a project with a client who might be headquartered in Europe, and then we'll find ourselves supporting them on projects around the world. So very exciting. I've worked quite a lot on projects, particularly in Switzerland, UK, France, Spain, Italy. And we are hearing a lot of interesting questions and trends from our clients and prospective clients around, what should they be doing, and what are the things that we're seeing. So out of that, we've developed a concept that we're referring to as the propeller workplace. And essentially what this arises from is that rather than sort of ripping up the blueprint for the office and completely restarting, what we're seeing the trends are that actually a lot of the things that we were seeing kind of emerging pre-COVID are now beginning to accelerate. So things such as digital transformation, which Ivan mentioned, aspects around adopting different collaboration tools, thinking about deploying the office space in a different way. All of these things have existed beforehand, but companies are now taking this opportunity to be a bit braver and to push and to move towards some more kind of progressive models. So if you think about something like sort of the type of activities that you do during your day at work, so you might be doing some learning, probably quite a lot of focus work, depending on your role, collaboration, of course, being really essential, and then the social element as well, which is really quite critical. And what we're finding is that some of these we can do pretty well through technological tools. We can kind of focus. Sometimes it's better when we're not in the office, if we're thinking about something like focusing. But actually, some of these activities that we need to do aren't really being fulfilled through these digital tools that we're using. So what we're looking at doing is really prioritizing the use of the office space in a way that caters to those things that you can't really replicate elsewhere. And what we're seeing is a focus rather than looking at sort of the business aspects and kind of dividing the spaces quite rigidly. What we're seeing instead is more thinking about it in terms of the overall experience of the workplace and what's the purpose of you being there. So if, for example, like me, if you have a commute that's 1.5 hours to get from my house to my office each day, why am I going into the office? What's pulling me there? What's the reason that I'm going there? And it's really sort of looking at what's the experience for staff and for clients as well coming into the space. So we're seeing sort of broadly split into aspects around sort of problem solving. So kind of coming together to think through a project or a particular initiative, coming away perhaps for a couple of hours to think about something in a more focused way, and then collecting back together. Looking also at innovation, so kind of learning, doing something new. I think particularly one of the areas that's been really difficult during lockdown is having people earlier in their careers being able to get mentoring and that sort of peer-to-peer learning. So that's quite hard to do digitally. We're seeing that as being pretty critical to the future workspace. And then community. People really miss seeing their colleagues. So I think a lot of businesses that were perhaps a little bit reluctant to provide those social spaces because they were saying, well, if you're not at your desk, you're not working. They're now realizing, well, actually, I can work from my terrace, I can work from my child's bedroom, I can work from my kitchen table, and I can still get stuff done. So they're realizing that where you work is not necessarily as important as what you're working on. So really kind of focusing in on investing in those community spaces, which support the overall experience of the workplace. So if we think about what the space actually looks like, you can see on the left a sort of typical diagram for a kind of more conventional pre-COVID type layout. So quite a lot of desk space, not necessarily terribly appealing. Some variety of space as well. So kind of offering some social spaces, collaborative settings, offering kind of flexible meeting space, and then kind of social spaces such as a canteen. So still offering variety and choice, but on the whole, one desk per person, a kind of assumption that most people are going to be working from a desk and most people are going to be in the office. What we're actually shifting towards is looking more at sort of spreading those different activities around the office and focusing more on these aspects around things like problem solving, innovation and learning, and then community. So the sort of functions begin to blend across the space. So you could begin your day kind of coming together with a group of people, looking at a particular initiative that you want to work on, maybe whiteboarding something, looking at what's the kind of activity of the day. Then you might break off into a smaller group and make use of a canteen type space, social space to do a little bit more of that work. And then there may be points where you have more confidential activities to do, where you might be using some of these enclosed spaces. So we're also taking into account here that you're not necessarily changing the footprint of the building, but what you are doing is you're shifting what it's doing for you. So although some clients are looking to make efficiencies, on the whole, what we're seeing is that people are tending to change the proportions of the different spaces that they're offering, rather than looking to reduce the floor plates that they are undertaking or leasing at the moment. So you can see that it begins to sort of shift a little bit. You're seeing fewer desks, but actually pretty much the same number of seats. So you can still fit the same number of people. They can still be productive. They can still be working. They just may not be working from a desk. So looking at the sort of overall picture, I'll zoom into some of these areas just very briefly. But one of the other key pieces is looking at the role of technology, particularly in terms of communication. So how are you embodying your brand, your values, different aspects of your business, and what makes it feel like an office that belongs to Unispace or belongs to Microsoft? What's that identity, that sense of being a part of something, and a sense of belonging? So really using sort of digital signage more effectively, introducing branding, having sort of more tactile spaces for companies that are working with physical products. We're seeing that certainly coming through. And also looking at aspects such as recording spaces. So for example, if I was doing this from the office, once I was allowed out of my house, perhaps I would be doing this from a kind of recording room that would enable me to do that. So just sort of thinking about the types of spaces that we're talking about. So when we're talking about community spaces, we're looking at sort of activating outside areas. So terraces, being able to work outdoors, also quite good from a COVID social distancing perspective. Fresh air being very good for that. Looking at maybe a space where you could have a sort of team coming together in a sort of amphitheatre setting for a huddle in the morning, and then that could become a film club, or it could become something else throughout the day. And then looking at more flexible spaces that could be used for events, but with offering choice where we know people still are going to need to focus or deal with privacy and confidentiality. In terms of innovation, we're looking at sort of creating flexibility into the space. So really saying that these spaces can do multiple things at multiple times, and we can look at finding furniture solutions or movable objects that can be put in place instead of building walls, which are obviously quite rigid and not terribly flexible. So the smarter we can be about the way we design the space, the more flexible and adaptable it can be over time. So elements such as sort of semi-permeable partitions, offering lots more planting as a way of screening off different areas rather than having partitions. And then elements such as sort of acoustic curtains, where you can kind of turn an open space into a meeting room temporarily, and then open it back up again to be more of a kind of project space or community space. And then sort of thinking more about the type of focus problem solving, the idea being that you have spaces where you can come to discuss and target what you want to be doing and working on, and then you have spaces to retreat and to be a little bit more focused and secluded as well. So really kind of maximizing choice, offering people plenty of different spaces to work, and then also kind of offering enough variability where we can also begin to put some sort of social distancing in place if we do need to kind of react to other events. And the final piece, which I think is quite exciting, is looking at some previews of projects that we're building using these principles. So this is a pharmaceutical client in Cham, which is just outside of Zurich. So looking at creating a kind of blended social space for both clients and team members. And then this is a reimagined executive suite. So where the executives no longer have personal offices. This is a client in Geneva. I'm really looking at creating these sort of semi-permeable spaces. You can have your sort of executive desk here. They can turn the desk around. They want to look at the window and sort of be in do not disturb mode, but they're also a lot more visible and accessible as well. So as we move through, we're also thinking about the city as a whole. So this is, I think, where desk bird philosophy comes in quite nicely. So we're thinking that actually people are going to be working from home. They'll have their personal lives blended throughout their day. They'll also be looking at using other parts of the city, so potentially flexible space as well, to fulfill some of these other activities. So really sort of work has left the building, and it's really about understanding how we can support people to have the right experience of the workplace. Thank you. Oh, Ivan, I think you're on mute.
Great, thanks a lot. Great talk, Charlotte, and really looking forward to these disruptive changes in the offices. So offices will really look different in a couple of years from now. And also looking forward to the Q&A. We have some questions already that came in. But now let's switch to Tobias Steger. He will take the view maybe from a more specific from one company, and I'll just hand it over to Tobias.
Thank you very much. I hope you can see the slide. So I think what Charlotte just showed us really well connects with what I will talk about, because we are in the midst of building a new headquarter for our people here in Switzerland. So actually we have one headquarter and 4 regional offices, but it's really going to change how we work in the future. And this is of course just how it works for us. So it means it's a really personal story, and it really depends from organization to organization. We are really much in this global shift, and I think it's for the first time I experience it. It's a global centralized behavior change. So especially in the how and where we want to work, how we commute, and so on. That's a complete change of mind, and also, of course, closely related to that is the use of technology. So I think this is really something special. And I was very happy that our CEO, Satya Nadella, quite early in the first lockdown, told the New York Times that we have to be very, very careful with going from one dogma into the other. So being, heavily focused on the office, but then also now shifted during COVID to the home office. So we at Microsoft strongly believe that it's going to be a hybrid world. And we believe that, and we are also hoping for that, because we feel that is something is really missing. And, we love technology, of course, but we also love the personal contact. And I think it was really helpful for all of us that our CEO stated this so clearly. And since then, we are really preaching the hybrid world wherever we can. So for us, modern work really has 3 key components. So one is technology, then culture and space. And what's really new, and this is already now happening, is this hybrid world. So we are really believe that the hybrid world is here to stay, and we really have to make sure that we can use technology, but also change our culture and our space, of course, to have an inclusive world for everybody. So this is my only technology slide, because of course we all love technology. I think we all know what it can do and how it can empower people. But at the end of the day, technology is just a means to an end. Much more important is the culture. And I strongly recommend the current issue of Bilanz, where there is an interview with Professor Heike Bruch, a very fascinating expert on leadership in hybrid worlds. And she talks a lot about trust, and she talks a lot about the change of how leaders now have to motivate and especially inspire people. And I think inspiration, inspire people, that is something that is really important. And we at Microsoft, we think leadership is not only a thing for a selected few, but everybody is a leader, because everybody is involved in project, in customer work. So leadership is something that we all should really have. That, of course, needs empowerment and accountability. So I think it's really important that we define leadership completely new. Also diversity, a topic that is not on everybody's mind, especially here in Switzerland. If you look at SME companies or even bigger companies. I think we really have to make a huge step forward and really change culture. And Heike Bruch even talks about only 5% of the companies in Switzerland are ready to do this leap into the digital hybrid world. So this is very, very interesting. So what about space? I mean, we are 3 years ago, we signed a contract for the Circle. That's a big company complex. We are going to see some pictures afterwards near the Flughafen Kloten in Zurich, so the Zurich airport. And we now have the amazing opportunity to reimagine how we want to work in this hybrid world. And as Ivan said, we are working location independently since 2012. So that means we don't have to go to the office. We have beautiful offices, but we don't have to go there. You know, we go there to see customers, we go there to see clients. We have a very open environment already. So the challenge is really what's the next level of that. And for us, the Circle really is a challenge in terms of how are we all going to do that? It's also a huge opportunity for us to be in what we call an ecosystem with an urban experience. Our HQ now is very isolated. It's huge. It's very beautiful, but we don't have any, neighbors and stuff. So since 2012, we have an open environment. We have customers and partners and friends and family open. They can come to us, co-work, book meeting spaces and so on. So this is something we really want to bring to the next level in terms of openness, collaboration, and I think such a room has to be inspiring. I think it's really something where we should encourage our customers and partners to use technology to enrich their lives and to achieve more. So I think the biggest challenge is the inclusiveness. How can we make sure that people who are joining meetings remotely are in the same room as we are when we do a meeting? And of course, we have a lot of cool technology to do that. For example, a camera that can see through somebody who writes on a whiteboard. It really works. I mean, it's amazing. Or the HoloLens, the augmented reality glass. We are also have cool products there where we can, talk to avatars and make this experience quite fun. But I think it's tricky, and it also needs a mind change of people being physically present in a room, how we include others. So this is actually really the first time we show this kind of renders to the outside world. So I think our office is on 2 floors. We talk about 3,500 square meters of collaboration space, and then we added another 1,000 square meter for what we call a Microsoft Technology Center on the 9th floor. So Microsoft Technology Center is kind of a Disneyland for technology where you can really experience different industry scenarios. So it's super exciting. So floor 10 is open to the public in terms of you can co-work here, you can book spaces. We even have a broadcast studio. Of course, I think that's a vital part of an office today, to have broadcast capabilities. As you can see in the upper left corner, we reduced the number of focus workplaces to around 70, coming from 290 in the current setup. So it's a dramatically reduction, and that's exactly what Charlotte said. It's not the place to do focus work. It's the place to do innovative work, to do collaboration stuff. Focus work I can do either in the park or at home or on a boat somewhere. So this is really to bring people together. Of course, we are also using regional spaces, co-working spaces, or working from home. And as you see in the corner down left, the circle ecosystem, of course, is also very important for us. So on the level 9, we have this Microsoft Technology Center, and then also a smaller place where employees only can have more private discussions. I think this is important, but 70% of our new space will be open for partners and customers. So I think this is vital, and this is exactly what we think the office is for in the future. So this is really something special, because we are really trained to do work remotely. But even in our project today, we feel so many problems in terms of people who really have problems to change. And I think this is exactly where I see a very huge challenge for every project that is in.
I think we lost the connection with Tobias. Tobias, we cannot hear you right now.
Can you hear me?
Now you're back now.
Okay, sorry for that. So
was probably a Microsoft problem.
It definitely is, but we are on Zoom, so no, I think that what I was just saying is that even with my colleagues and also changing the space is really tough, and we are experiencing some really tough discussions now. And so changing location is always a huge effort in change management, and I think it's very important to listen to the colleagues on what they have for worries, and it's very important to tell them that they can park their car there, and why don't we have a cafeteria anymore, and so on. So it's really a change in office is also a human challenge and also a human problem. So that's what I wanted to say. And of course, I'm very much looking forward to your question.
Great talk. Thanks a lot, Tobias. And very inspiring seeing how Microsoft is kind of at the forefront of this change, and has been it already since like 2012. Very cool. So I'm also looking forward to the Q&A. We have many questions actually that came in. So let's then just jump into the Q&A.
Sure. Thank you guys for sharing a lot of questions in the chat. And I want to start with something fun to break the ice, which is a question that was directed at Charlotte. You know, did you think of including a space to take naps?
Yes. You'd be surprised. Quite a lot of the schemes that we've worked on recently include little nap pods. So a little bit like you might have in an airport, and you can go and there's a setting. It might be like a guided meditation or something, and it's supposed to sort of refresh you after 20 minutes. So quite a lot of schemes that we've worked on have included those. They're quite expensive, but they are generally quite well used. And I think particularly when we're talking a lot about well-being at the moment, that's one of the things that people can do. So whether you actually want to take a sleep or whether you just need to kind of not be around people for 20 minutes, there's definitely a value in that. And we're seeing a lot of people investing in those type of spaces.
So one of the the rooms that we are heavily also focusing on is the room for young mothers who bring their children to work. So breastfeeding, and this is a real need, and we will definitely take care for that. Yeah.
Awesome. I think this fits super nicely into your theme of inclusion.
Yeah.
And but there was also a bit of a more serious question. Constantine asked, what are the skills that are most in demand? And I would like to add to that question, how does it reflect in the space?
Okay. I think it depends on the organization. But what I would say is that one of the key things that we're seeing increasing a lot is around the ability to think creatively and to take on more sort of problem-solving type activities. So maybe 10, 15 years ago, you wouldn't necessarily expect your finance team to be super creative, but actually now that sort of creative thinking, customer-centric, thinking really about your customer, whether that's somebody buying a product from you or your colleague who is using the service that you provide, is much more at the forefront. So that sort of human-centric piece that Tobias was also talking about is certainly in demand. And then also from a technology side of things, we're seeing a lot more sort of developers, people that are coding. And again, those spaces tend to need to be a little bit quieter, a little bit more secluded, some additional sort of technology that needs to be taken into account. But I think across the board, everybody is expected to be more collaborative. And in particular, leadership are expected to be more collaborative and more involved and engaged in the day-to-day work that's taking place.
Toby, you were mentioning also in our talk before the session that you had exactly this problem that Charlotte just touched upon, that you have different types, different groups of people with different needs. How did you tackle that problem or those needs for Microsoft?
At the end of the day, I think there's only one solution: to have different spaces, because I don't think that the circle will fit everybody's needs. So we really try to separate them and do like a development center where we have development specific surroundings. So I think that's the only way to go. I wanted to add on what Charlotte just said. For us, the most important skill is really listening and empathy, because of course Microsoft is doing very well. I mean, our technology is really in high demand, but many of our customers are suffering, and I think we really need to be humble and also have a lot of empathy for what the situation is that the customer is experiencing right now. So I think listening and empathy are also very important characteristics for the future.
Awesome. That brings us super neatly to another great question that we got from Christina in the chat. And she was asking, you were touching, Toby, upon the new trust, the element of trust. How would you define it? Can you give a bit more details to it?
I think trust begins when you talk, in our case, of course, talk about the opportunities of technology, but also the risks and the challenges. And I think especially when you talk about artificial intelligence and so on, there is a huge risk involved. And we have to discuss this topic now, because we think that we need regulations, we need a common understanding on how we use, even develop artificial intelligence to make sure that it fits everybody's needs, and our understanding of that it is really helping people to achieve more and not substituting people or more stuff like this. So I think it's vital to also talk about the risks.
And that also, I mean, you said, Toby, everybody is a leader, which I loved. I noted that down. That's one of our values at Shake Up the Workplace. That's something we believe, because everybody is involved, as you said. And also Charlotte touched upon it, right? Everybody has a customer that they are in charge of to help them fulfill their needs. Would you think, in your opinion, would you have been able to work out this change for Microsoft without management support?
No, I don't think so, because it's important that the CEO, in our case, we have a lady CEO since many years, so she has to walk the talk, and when she does it, everybody else will follow. But I think in Microsoft, really, we just, it's a normal thing that ideas are not coming from the leadership team normally, but from everybody. And so I think it's very important to be open to listen to anyone on the team. And we also have tools like reverse mentoring, where we sit down. I'm over 50 years old, so I need feedback from a early in career person, to make sure that I don't lose the sight of reality, because I have certain things in my mind, and I really have to make sure that I'm in a growth mindset and not a knowing all. And I don't think that rank is important. I think it's diversity, it's ideas from everybody, because everybody brings her or his own experience to the table.
Mm-hmm. Charlotte, what do you see? You help other companies along on their journey to tackle this question about the new office, the new work space. So what's your experience in dealing with leadership and project teams in this regard?
Yes, I think whatever the nature of the change that you're undertaking, having leadership support and having it be consistent is enormously important. So I think for one good example would be something like having personal offices. We work a lot with businesses where somebody's designed the building 10 years ago, and you have offices that are 70, 60 square meters, which are almost as big as my house. And you see these very grand spaces, and then you see everybody else is just kind of desks. And if they want to make a change, they have to change. So you can't persuade other people to give something up or to work in a different way unless they are prepared to make those changes themselves. And I think sometimes there is a kind of misconception, because leadership is often very enthusiastic about change. There's an understanding that it's really important to be engaging with people, to get the ideas out of everybody, whether they turned up yesterday or whether they've been there for 20 years. So leadership isn't generally the issue. What we find is that sometimes sort of staff have a perception that their questions or their contributions are not welcome. So it's a sort of miscommunication where leaders are saying, yes, I'm open, come into my office. But if you're sort of turning up for your first day at work, you're probably not going to take the elevator to the 12th floor and go through the space that's got the marble floors and knock on the CEO's door. So it has to be seen from both sides. And I think things that Tobias is saying about things like reverse mentoring are fantastic for that. And the way that we design space is a great leveler. So if we're physically taking the sort of leadership from the top floor with the terraces and the nicer coffee, and we're putting them with everybody else and they're with their teams, that sends a really clear message about culture. So I think that the sort of culture and space are very intrinsically linked when we're working on these type of projects.
Yeah, awesome. I think we talked also about that space is communication. And we have two of those questions in the chat as well, Marcus and Constantine. I will try to, looking at the time, put your questions together. And do you have any good anecdotes, both of you, for good communication, especially under these circumstances that are kind of foreign to a lot of people? Not a lot of companies have been remote first before, or is it all just the same old in a new dress?
You mean in the COVID times now?
Yeah.
Yeah, I think we are struggling quite heavily with that, because I think I have to say, at Microsoft, we use all our tools, and it's just too much. Some days I'm really over flooded with messages, and I think we really have to also reinvent how we communicate. And that's why I also very much looking forward for in-person town halls and stuff like that. Of course, they will be also broadcasted, but I think at the moment it's a huge challenge. And also, I mean, with our technology, using Teams, you know, sometimes you're so overwhelmed. I think that we really have to learn more about how to reach our colleagues. And I think it will be mobile, of course. Everything will be on the mobile, and it will be snackable content, mostly video, but we are definitely working on that, and we haven't found the right solution or the secret sauce yet. So
I think that's a really good point, sort of reconsidering communication. I think it's particularly hard for leaders at the moment, because whenever they communicate something, we're in a situation where a lot of people are experiencing a lot of uncertainty and anxiety, and people tend to kind of read in between the different lines of what people are saying, and they don't always come away with the same interpretation. And I think sometimes there is an excess of communication as well. You know, we all experienced that sort of during the kind of Tiger King and banana bread part of lockdown. We were all kind of having, you know, 20 Zoom meetings a day, checking in with every project we were working on, and we just got absolutely nothing done. So I think we're rebalancing things. We're learning a little bit more to trust our colleagues to get on with what needs to be done and to be able to reach out when we need them. But I think still it's very hard to replicate that informal discussion of sort of bumping into somebody from another team over coffee, or just, you know, chatting to somebody in the elevator that you don't normally see. So I think it's, you know, the physical space is actually enormously important in how we communicate.
I think that's a great way, looking at the time, to end it, that we need to revisit and reinvent the way we communicate. Thank you, Constantine, for your great comments in the chat as well. And thanks to the two of you for being our awesome speakers today.
Yes.
You're welcome. Thanks for having me.
Thanks a lot, Tobias and Charlotte, again. Really inspiring talks, and also to the audience, to very engaging questions. Then looking at the time, we would wrap it up. Maybe let's wrap it up with one quote from Paulo Coelho, who said, "Everything that happens once can never happen again, but everything that happens twice will surely happen a third time." So this was the second Future of Work talk, and we look forward to our third one, the next one. We'll keep you posted. Thanks.
Bye-bye.
Thank you, guys.
Stay safe. Bye-bye.
Bye.
Bye-bye.
Bye.